Hello everybody and welcome back to the next episode of the Job and Reuben Show.
I meant to say Jobin. I meant to say the and Job part.
Well, I've done it now, so tough luck.
Right, alright. Today we've got a very special one for all of you because it's a topic that kind of straddles the line between history and technology. Has a bit of both in there if you're into that sort of thing. Because today we're going to have, you could say, a rail of a time talking about bullet trains.
Yeah.
One of the longest running kinds of trains, some of the fastest trains. And
Some of the fastest trains.
Yeah, still some of the fastest trains. And I'm sure the pride of joy of any Japanese engineering student.
Yes. So, I need a pun. What's
Yeah, you just can't compete with rail of a time, can you?
So let's speed on to the podcast. So first we need to talk about the history of the bullet trains. So why didn't you set the scene for us, Job?
That's right. Our story begins in Japan. It's just been World War II, and the Japanese, having picked the wrong side, let's just say, have just had a rather terrible time. Their economy is in ruin. They've basically spent all of their resources fighting a war that they lost, and been nuked twice, which I'm sure doesn't go down very well, and they're basically in dire need of recovery. Thankfully, that recovery came because, thanks to a bit of helpful support from the US and kind of being in a bit of a lucky situation as being one of the most developed countries in Asia, they quickly got back into their financial recovery, and what we now call the Japanese economic miracle began. But there's a big problem with when you're earning a lot of money, because of course, money doesn't just come from growing some grass and selling it, does it?
No, money grows on trees.
Oh yeah, of course. Most money comes from manufacturing, and that was really the bread and butter of the Japanese economic recovery. But of course, manufacturing means moving resources, and most importantly, moving people, because people are talent, and you want talent getting to all the biggest places, the big cities in Japan.
So how do you move it around easily? Insert bullet trains.
Exactly. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there had been plans for bullet trains even before World War II. So there'd been plans for a while, but now there was really a big demand in the country. They were desperately in need of a way to move all these people around, speed up the economy, oil the cogs of the Japanese economy, if you will. However, there was still a bit of skepticism about it. And
not many people believed that it could be done.
Yeah, exactly.
And
because
the US weren't very helpful about it either.
Yeah. Around the time that these plans were circulating around, in the US, it had largely been, much to the disdain of train nerds, the US had largely been moving away from trains and towards cars as the main form of movement, which I don't really know how you feel about that.
Yeah, but back then everyone wasn't using those kind of trains. It was different trains altogether.
It was way out of date.
Yeah, it was a whole new kind of idea, essentially, bullet trains.
So the original idea for the bullet trains was dreamt up by a man called Hideo Shima. He was a incredibly talented Japanese engineer, much more talented than we probably are at school, and he saw a very clear solution in trains to the transportation problem. Trains are not going out of date anytime soon. He still saw the utility in them, and he knew how to fix this kind of problem. The plans began in 1957, pretty much in the slap bang middle of the economic swing, and the actual line opened in October 1st, 1964. Yeah. The main line and the first line that was opened was called the Tokaido line.
The biggest line at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the only line at that point, because before that, most of the trains were just old steamers, maybe a few diesels, not exactly high speed, as you can imagine, mostly used for freight. But what made the Tokaido line so important is that it connected the two main economic hubs of Japan, the three main economic hubs of Japan, and that would be Tokyo, where the business is, Nagoya, which is a bit further out, but also a main business hub, and the historical centre of Japan, Kyoto. By connecting all these cities together, it essentially formed one. I've seen this comparison used before, form one big mega city where you could feasibly, you're a guy living in Kyoto, and even though you live in Kyoto, you commute to work in Tokyo.
I suppose that's very handy from trying to get from one place to another, linking everyone together.
Exactly. I suppose the comparison that could be made is, imagine you're living in Scotland right now, and all of a sudden your friend tells you that a new train's been built, and now you can feasibly commute to London as part of your job. Like, this is the kind of jump we're talking about.
Except for it did not cost half as much as HS2 is going to cost.
That's true, but we'll get to that. High-speed trains, as you can probably imagine, not purely a fun ride. And these lines, fast.
They were very fast.
What really drove the Tokaido line was, of course, the rolling stock, what was running on the Tokaido line. And that would be the O series of bullet trains. So, at the time, of course, it was the fastest and most advanced train in the world, without a doubt.
Yeah,
high-speed rail, its max speed was over 130 miles per hour. So, of course, it did often have to run under that because, don't want the rails to set on fire. So it definitely does live up to the name of high-speed train.
But that was the very Bullet iconic cone-shaped design to help with the aerodynamics.
Because it wasn't,
yeah.
You being a construction student, you'll understand product design. This is the same thing. Product design student, you know that it isn't just about slapping the biggest engine in a box and making it go fast.
Big engine, go boom.
Pretty much.
Wow, rocket science.
There were a lot of really creative things that went into building the bullet train and made it really the marvel of technology that it was. Firstly, air conditioning. Can't live without it, can you?
Love air conditioning. And imagine that in 1964, a sweltering hot day, and you could step onto one of these things and you get a nice, cool breeze across your face.
There are still some houses in the UK that don't have air conditioning, whereas these trains had it in, as you say, 1964. The propulsion system, as I say, incredible, and a lot of that relied on the train's aerodynamics, as you said. Mm-hmm. It's really where it gets the name bullet train from, as the front of the train did literally look like a bullet. But of course, this wasn't just a train for the super wealthy either, was it?
No, anyone could use this train.
Yeah, of course. The train itself could hold over 1,000 people. I think sources say up to 1,340 people in total.
That's a lot of people.
Most importantly of all, though, it was able to cut the commute time from Nagoya to Tokyo almost in half. I mean, and you have to understand that it wasn't a direct, straight line or anything. It bended and weaved and still was able to transport people in under 3 hours, which previously, the sad old steamers that had ran between the two cities before had only been able to do that in 6 hours 40. So, a massive jump that we see. And of course, that legacy of engineering continues to this day. I mean, bullet trains are still in use. You ever go to Japan, which I don't really know if you're one of the people bothered. I'd love to go.
No, I think it's got some quite nice mountains I'd quite like to walk up.
Why'd you go to Japan, Ruben? I went for the mountains.
The mountains and the fields and the scenery, I think all the nature there is going to be quite nice. But then I'd quite like to see quite a lot of the ancient history part. That seems really fun.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's quite a lot of I'd like to see in Japan.
You'll be able to do that in style because, as I say, bullet trains are still in use. In Japan, they're known as the Shinkansen, which I don't think it's at all related to the name bullet train. Modern bullet trains have a speed of nearly 320 kilometers per hour, so
that's good.
A pretty big jump, whereas other high-speed trains of similar capacity, those in China, far, far slower, and in fact HS1, which, as you know, the one that links London to Channel Tunnel, probably the most, would I be right in saying the most important train in the UK, probably?
Well, it kind of it kind of helps connect everything internationally, so...
Yeah, probably.
If you move in between countries from the UK, then it is a fairly important train.
I'd say almost anyone...
Because it does kind of link you to the Channel Tunnel.
If you've left the UK, you've probably ridden on it. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah.
Yeah, or was it different to the Eurostar? HS1 is a bit of an interesting thing. So here it says HS1 is a 109 kilometre rail between St Pancras International and the Channel Tunnel.
It connects the high-speed routes between London and Paris, London and Brussels, and London and Amsterdam, as well as a domestic route.
Right. Still key in Britain's business now. However, that is only able to go at a measly 140 miles per hour compared to the Japanese bullet trains, nearly 200 miles per hour. So, big jump, big jump. It's the pride of Japan. Still make up a lot of their infrastructure. Get off your phone.
I was googling HS1.
Oh, sure you are. Not listening to me. Oh. I mean, it's alright. I feel like it's hard to get proud about trains in the UK, because, like, have you ever ridden on a steam train?
Yeah, Severn Valley Railways.
Oh, yeah, same. They are lovely, but then you look at other countries and you realise we don't have it, do we? Our
No.
trains are not quite there, are they?
And especially how we tried to get HS2 running, but that's just, they wanted to do it to help with the economic divide, but actually I think initially,
All that money that could be put to the north is now going towards a twain.
yeah, because it's over budget. Currently it's £44.6 billion, and that's still going to go up. But it's really stupid how, and the environmental impact with all the stuff they're having to build and places they're having to move, because they're going to have to put new rails in, they're having to dig and build new bridges and divert roads, which, yes, it'll be
And I mean, for
be
what?
good.
Like, you're going to get a slightly faster train connection? I mean, I'm all for high-speed rail, you know.
because
I'm
aren't they stopping it going from the north now, aren't they?
It only
I
goes up
think-
to Birmingham now.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it only goes from Birmingham to London, which now is absolutely useless, because before actually going to Manchester, actually it's really good because it does connect, but now it's just another route to Birmingham.
It's just
But
you get the
people-
feeling they just want to get it over with, don't you?
It was a bad mistake, and I think they just needed to find another way to connect it better. New trains, yes.
What do you think the answer would be then to fixing HS2? Should we dump it, as Nigel Farage keeps saying, or should we pause, take a breather, and then go at it again?
Think pause, take a breather, completely look at everything that needs doing, and reevaluate, and possibly dumping it if we're going to carry on making a loss. But are we too far in at £44.6 billion?
But I mean, high-speed trains, you know, no matter what way you look at it, we still do need them. I mean,
Yeah.
we're majorly behind on our train
We
infrastructure.
do need some better
So,
trains.
if we dump HS2, I think the worry is, does that not look like we're giving up on high-speed trains altogether?
But could we have put it into something? Could we improved some of the lines, expanded the lines either side, maybe do it in sections, so from one city to the next, and then from that city, and just keep expanding it and keeping those trains running.
So you're saying instead of one big HS2 lofty plan, we should have done it in stages?
Yeah, so I don't know, like
one
a-
after
like
one after the other.
Oxford to Banbury, make that stretch, so anyone from Oxford to Banbury can keep running, then going from, and then making the Banbury to Coventry stretch. So now that stretch is done, so now actually you could ride Coventry to Oxford and stop at Banbury, or you could just go from Coventry to Oxford really fast. But maybe we should have invested in maglev trains.
I think it's a bit ambitious. It's bold. Maglev is really it's a bit of a controversial take. Some people seem to think it's the next big thing. It's the next high-speed rail.
It is.
Whereas others think it's way over budget. It's just never going to compete economically with high-speed rail.
But you think about it, Japan's maglev can reach a whopping 374 miles per hour, compared to like the original bullet trains they had reaching 130. That almost triples it. So
But I think what we have to
Really good.
take into account is that Japan is at a much higher state. Japan and China, who are the real big maglev players here, are at a much higher state than we are. I mean, China, in I think less than 30 years, has managed to build a larger high-speed rail network than all of the UK in breakneck speed. Japan, of course, are the mothers and fathers of high-speed rail, so it makes sense for them to do it. But for us, we don't need maglev. We just need regular old high-speed rail that connects all of our cities, so that transport will finally be efficient.
Yeah, and it needs to be done faster than a couple of years.
Oh yeah.
But I don't. But then, how fast can you make something go without not going over budget?
That is the problem.
But
Do you think the answer would be bring in Japan Rail, because Japan Rail still owns a lot of UK rail companies? So do you think the answer would be bring them in, get them to do the planning and the budgeting, as we've proved that we just can't do that? We're not trusted.
That's a really sensible idea, I think, because at the end of it, Japan gets a lot of money. We get a new and improved rail system. And you look at other countries, take Seoul South, their trains cost a fraction of ours, and they're really clean and they're really nice. They have dual doors for ventilation, and they're apparently really good and clean and efficient. And so, but Japan's trains, they're always on time, a minute, and they're always on
I believe if they aren't on time, you get a full refund, although
do.
that might be Switzerland.
And you're considering our trains are just going on strike because they're not getting paid enough. There's an issue.
We can't afford to pay the drivers, let alone for the trains.
But-
Do you think you're going to ride HS2 when it's finished?
No.
Not even for fun.
I think we might end up being forced to, though, because if you want to get to London, but it'll be a premium. It would have to cost more. So, will it really matter if I can save an extra couple pounds and spend half an hour extra on a train? Actually, well, if I got a film, I'm fine.
Yeah. I think the big problem is trains don't exist alone. They have a lot of competition. Firstly from cars, because cars, although they are more expensive in the long run,
Planes.
the infrastructure's already there. And as you say, planes, which again, it's very cheap to build an airport, but long term, planes end up costing more than trains do.
And they're also bad for the environment.
Oh yeah, as Greta would say.
Yes.
Whereas trains, you can electrify them. Can't put a battery in a plane, can you?
But they also the fuel they use and that is also better than fuel and the amount of emissions that come from a plane. But for you people who don't know about maglev, it is the fastest in the world currently because it uses magnets to repel each other, which reduces the friction.
Some physics gobbledygook. Either way, it's able to go over 374 miles per hour, which is what we care about. It's fast.
So why not in the UK? Why don't you feel that we should invest a bunch of this money into the UK and have
I just think that
maglev?
I just think that we've already proved that we cannot be trusted to budget high-speed rail. So maglev, which is a new technology, hasn't proven itself yet, and even Japan, which is one of the richest countries in the world and one of the best train building companies in the world, even they've gone over budget with their Shinkansen. I don't think they've gone over budget, but it is costing trillions and trillions of yen. And for them, it's going to pay off because
Everyone
what they want is for Nagoya, Kyoto, and Tokyo to become one big mega city, for you to be able to commute in, I think they promised, an hour from Nagoya to Kyoto. It's good. I just don't think we're ready for it. Like, for all we know, maglev could prove to be really unreliable and really not pay off.
Yeah.
Whereas it's too much of a gamble. And
we just need to get our life sorted out at this moment in time.
We do, because, as charming as steam trains are, and we all do love them,
Choo choo.
they can't last forever, can they?
No, unfortunately not. Thank you for listening to this amazing podcast. I think I've learnt a lot, and I hope you have too.
And we're going to leave the question for you. Should the UK go the Japan route and build its very own bullet trains, or maybe even maglevs, or is it too much of a gamble? Should we move to cars or planes or some other hyperloops? I don't know. Teleportation someday. Transportation and technology. It's really an interesting subject because there's so many opinions. It's always innovating and
always using new technologies.
Yeah, trying to solve the age-old question: how do we move as many people as quickly as possible? But thank you very much for listening. As I say, it's been a fun one. Researching this was very fun.
Yes.
And we'll see you in the next one, where I suppose I can't spoil anything. Sorry, we're going to be doing a podcast. That's all I can say. Goodbye.
Goodbye.